All right. Do you think?
Amazing. Okay, I'm gonna do most of this class probably just sitting down just so I can work the computer. Has anyone written an offer before? We've got one, two, not here. Okay, gotcha. Perfect. Okay. Yeah, this works great. Yeah, we'll do this. Okay, awesome. Okay, first everybody tell me your name, because I like knowing people's names rather than just staring at blank faces in the crowd. So, let's start here in the back. Can you tell me your name? Stacey Woodruff. Awesome. And then here, Sophie. I can't even say that last name. I'm so sorry. Segura. Okay. Okay. Sophie, right? Yes. Sophie. Okay. Stacy, Sophie, Eve. I've met you before. Okay. Jocelyn. Awesome. Casey. Fantastic. Well, my name's Brittany. I've been here at KW for, oh geez, coming up on 5 years, I think. And I am the transaction coordinator here, which basically just means I help you with all the paperwork needed on listings, offers, under contracts, things like that. So obviously today we're talking about how to write up an offer. So the first thing that you need when you're writing up an offer is a buyer. Hopefully at this point you already have a buyer broker agreement in place because you need those before you go and show houses to somebody, right? If you have questions on that, come talk to me after. I can show you how to write up that document. It's super easy. But we're gonna skip that and just go straight to the offer. So that being said, I need a property also to write up an offer on. Does anyone have a property that they've been looking at recently that would be fun to write an offer on? Like something you've been looking for a client or anything like that? Great. Okay, tell me either the address or the MLS number. Okay. Let's see if we can find it really quick. Is it a townhouse? It's a condo. Okay. Fantastic.
I always find it through the realtor.com.
Okay, let's see. Let's go to well, I have one match here. We'll see if this is it. Is this it?
No.
Oh, that's Heber City. In Lehigh. Okay. Let's go ahead. What's the one that you have, Eve? Sorry, next time though, we're gonna do a practice after this and you can practice it on the one that you have. Okay, what is it? Oh, that's I see the 2, 12, 10, 18. Oh, my bad. 1, 2, 1, 8. This one here. Oh, that's cute. Very fun. Okay, cool. Gotcha. Okay, I like it. All right, so if you have your computer, pull it up and log on to the MLS just because it's a lot easier to follow along as I'm clicking through because you're going to do your own offer after I run through how to do this. Okay, so usually when I'm writing up an offer, there's a lot of different ways you can write it up. You can do it all in SkySlope. You could have a printed out purchase contract and fill it out by hand. I like doing it straight from the MLS. So what I usually do is I'll look up the property first, and then I'll open up a new tab. And then I'll go to Forms, and I go to the URE Legacy Forms Library. This is where you can get all of the state-sanctioned documents you can need. Buyer broker agreement, listing agreement, lead-based paint disclosure, all that stuff can be here. So SkySlope is essentially, it's like a DocuSign platform. So you can send it through SkySlope and people can sign it like they do on DocuSign. It's the one that has partnered with utahrealestate.com. So that's why they have most of their forms in there as well that are fillable. So yeah, it's kind of like, it's like the MLS library mixed with DocuSign. So people like it just because you can send it directly from there. From here, you'd have to download your filled out document and then upload it into DocuSign, which is how I do it because when I started, SkySlope was not a thing. So I've just gotten really fast at DocuSign. So I've stuck with that. However, we are moving from DocuSign to a different platform in a month or two that I don't know anything about. So it'll be a learning curve for everybody. But yes, you can absolutely use SkySlope. I just know that with SkySlope, they don't have all the updated forms all the time. And so sometimes it'll be like, well, here's like a PDF of it, but you can't do anything with it in SkySlope, which is why I just always pull it from here. Yeah. Okay. So first, what you're going to need to find is the purchase agreement or the purchase contract. I usually just search purchase and it'll give me all the addenda I could ever need here. So first we need a real estate purchase contract here. Can everyone see or should I turn off the light in the front? Let's see if I can figure out how to do it. Nope, not that one. Not that one. Aha. Okay, great. Oh, that's easier. Fantastic. Okay. Okay, so we have a real estate purchase contract. The other document you will most likely need, especially in this market, a lot of the times buyers are asking sellers for something like seller concessions, right? They're asking the seller to contribute maybe $5,000 to their closing costs, that kind of a thing. So that would need to be written up in an addendum. So I'm going to add that here. The other one I see a lot of the times is if, let's say you have a first-time home buyer, there's a lot of those first-time home buyers that are going to be using like an FHA loan rather than a conventional loan. We have a specific addendum that discloses that. So you would use this FHA/VA loan addendum. Those are the ones you're going to see the most. The other one that I see the most often is going to be like, let's say that your buyer needs to sell their current home in order to afford this home, then it would be a subject to sale of buyer's property addendum. We're going to skip that for now because we're going to pretend our buyers are just first-time home buyers. Yeah. That's written into the real estate purchase contract. Yep. So as long as you have this, you'll be able to write that in. Yep. Great question. Okay. Any question on the list of documents? Obviously, we don't have time to go through all of them, but if anyone has a specific question that they've been wondering about. Okay, cool. Okay, so as I'm putting this packet together, you noticed I was clicking on the green plus buttons over here instead of the names. If I click on the name, it's just going to open up the document immediately. But because I want to group all of these in a packet, if you do the plus button, they'll move over here and then I can create the packet and it'll save all three of those together. Okay, so that's why I did it that way. First thing you're going to do once you create the packet is save the packet. It's the worst if you ever get kicked out and you're halfway through writing an offer and then you have to start all over again. Okay, so I'm going to start, I usually name it just with my client's last name and then offer. And then I usually will save the address. So if I go back to my MLS listing, I'll just copy and paste this. And it's in Lehigh. And then I'll click save. But that way, if you ever do get kicked out, you can go to your saved forms here, look it up by your client's name, and it'll show right up. Okay. Okay. We're going to take the shortcut here. The best way to write up an offer, as long as the home is listed on the MLS, is to copy and paste the MLS number here. So sorry, just notice I'm going back and forth between tabs. If you're wondering where I'm getting things, it's usually because I'm looking over at the listing. You're going to go to auto-populate forms here. Click here, copy and paste the MLS number here and click load. And then it fills out a lot of the information for you. fills out the address, it fills out the inclusions and exclusions if there are any listed directly on the MLS, which is really nice. And then I just need to put my buyer's name. We're gonna do Ted Lasso. Your name should show up if you're logged into your account. And then if you scroll all the way down here, your license number and your brokerage license number is loaded up as well. Now what we need to find is the seller name. For that, you don't always know what it is, but if you go back to the listing, down at the bottom, you have the owner here. So I can just copy and paste this right here. And then I paste it right there and I have my seller, okay? If you don't see it, if it's not listed on the listing right there, I just type in owner of record. And that just tells title or whoever's looking at that, whoever is on the title of the home, that's who's selling it essentially. And then if for whatever reason, the listing agent sent over like a counter offer or an addendum later, they could add the seller's name later, okay? But that's kind of my workaround for that. You can also, if you have time, you can go and look up on the actual like county records, like the tax data, and you can usually find the owner's name there. But this is just my quick and easy way to do it, is just find it on the listing, okay? Any questions on that? Okay, so the listing agent should be listed if you've auto-populated their license number, brokerage, all that stuff. The other thing you're going to put is the date offer. Usually that's the day that you're writing it up, because that's the day you're going to have your buyer sign. Or if for whatever reason, like you know that they're not going to be able to sign until Wednesday because they're out of town and they won't get back into cell service till Wednesday, you could forward date it, okay? Once you have all that, go ahead and click fill/update fields. You get the success message, and then you can close this drop down here. And then it gives you, see, it puts in a bunch of that information already. Any question on the auto-populate? I usually don't. The one thing I will double check is inclusions and exclusions, mostly because I'm checking with my buyer, like, hey, do we actually want to ask for that? Yeah, great question though. But no, usually it should be filled out, and if not, then it's on the listing agents. That's their responsibility. But obviously I would make sure before you send your offer to be signed by anybody, obviously double check it. And that's when I usually check that. Okay, so let me see the price on here. Yes, of course. Uh-huh. Yeah.
So in 1.2, other completed items, need
Yeah.
by other stuff, but for example, it says refrigerator,
Mhm.
but you also have to have the option to donate.
Yeah.
Do you have to do both?
Nope, I usually just do one or the other. Usually if I know that they're listing microwave and refrigerator, I'll just click them here and then I'll delete them from here. And then make sure you click other if there's anything else in here. Great question. Okay, so the price on this home, they originally listed for almost $660. Now they've moved it down to $650 almost. So that tells me that they're having a hard time selling it, which means that my buyer has a little more negotiating power because it's been sitting on the market since July. So I might recommend to my seller, like, hey, I think you can maybe get away with offering $640. Yeah. Hmm.
Let's just find it for a while.
Okay.
You put back on. So part of the reason why,
Oh, interesting.
and interestingly enough, last week I looked for it again.
Uh-huh.
I was community
Yeah.
and something like that it was gone again. I wonder
Oh, interesting.
why.
Yeah.
Well, it's not restricted, but it is pretty much. Yeah, I think to say that it is not.
Mm-hmm.
Probably not.
Interesting. So that would definitely be something that I would call the agent on before even submitting the offer and be like, hey, can you clear up a couple of things for me? I've been watching your listing for a few weeks and I'm noticing some things are changing week to week. Can you give me some clarification? And you can you can ask for things like, can you send me a copy of the seller's property condition disclosure before we even write up the offer? Because that'll clear up some things like that. They don't necessarily have to send that to you because you're not under contract yet. So they could refuse to send it to you, but sometimes you can get it and look them over with your client before you submit an offer. So, okay. So I'm gonna say that we're gonna do $640 for the purchase price on this offer. Again, I am not the expert. Well, I am not the expert on what you should offer, like what you should suggest to your clients to offer as far as price. That's not my specialty. If you have questions on that, call Cam. Cam's a lot more experienced with that kind of a thing. I just write up the documents. I can give you some answers and what I would suggest, but I don't necessarily have as many years of experience as Cam does. Yeah. And hopefully by this point, you've been running comps to see what else in that area has sold for and things. So you have a more informed, but because I haven't, I'm just now looking at this, I'm just going with a ballpark here. So I'm going to say 640. Okay, so, but for this first amount here is actually asking for the earnest money deposit, not for the purchase price. So earnest money, Dean, our broker, suggests about 1% for earnest money, which in this case would be $6,400. You don't know, that's not a hard, fast rule. I've seen people put down $500. I've seen people put down $50,000. Like, it just kind of depends what your buyer wants to do and how sure they are that they want the property. If they're very sure that they want it, you could put down a large amount. I'm going to go ahead and say 5,000 though for this. That seems pretty standard for a home this size. And then they're going to pay that amount in the form of, I'll say, a wire or check. What that means is that they can either bring in a check to the brokerage for that earnest money amount, or we can use what's called Deposit Link. That's our online payment system that you or your transaction coordinator can send them a link and they can pay electronically. Okay, that's the only kind of wire. It can be a personal check or a cashier's check. This can be a little misleading. Here at KW, we don't actually accept wires, even from title companies. Like, we have to receive a check. So if your client, a lot of the times, like if it's a corporation or someone very wealthy, they're like, let me just wire you the money. And you say, no, we can't do that. You can either pay it through the online system or we can do a check, just so you know. There is, it's like $15 or $18. I can't remember, but it's minimal. Yeah. But it's super safe. We've been using it for years and we've never had any kind of fraud issues with it at all. So if people have questions about that. Okay, the one thing I will change here in the property address, you'll notice it put the entire address here and then it restated the city, county, zip code, all that stuff. That's fine. You can leave it like that. It's not a big deal. I like adding the MLS number though here. Oh, whoops. And the reason for that is, let's say that in the list of inclusions on the MLS listing, right, it had microwave, refrigerator, and I think video doorbell. But let's say in the comments, it also said hot tub is included. If I put the MLS listing number saying this is exactly what I'm offering on, you could argue that even if hot tub is not listed here on inclusions, because it was included in the listing agent's comments, it's included in the price. You could, yeah, yep. But I'm just saying, if for whatever reason we missed it, and all of a sudden you get to the closing table and the title company is like, where's the hot tub? And anyway, you could go back in and kind of reference it. But just things like that. This is something that Dean, the broker, suggests doing, just in case if they ever tried to change something on the listing, like after you're under contract, you can go back and say, no, we specifically referenced this MLS listing number on this date. So whatever it was at that date, that's what we were basing it off of. You know what I mean? Just kind of helps from a legal standpoint. Tax ID number is going to be auto-filled. But if it doesn't, for whatever reason, you can always pull it from the MLS listing, okay? Okay, so that's property. Section 1.1 is talking about included items. These are just standard inclusions: solar panels, TV mounts, blinds and shutters, window screens, mounted speakers are actually included without needing to be specifically said so. That's literally written into any contract, okay? So if you're ever representing a seller, make sure that they know that. Like, hey, if you have a mounted TV, you can take the TV, but the mount has to stay with the house, that kind of a thing, okay? Hi, Amy, come on in. You're already a pro at this, but come join us. Oh, good. Okay, and then section 1.2 is those other included items. So things like washer and dryer. If it's not included in the listing, you can still ask for it. It's not a problem. You can still ask for it. You just may not get it. They may counter and say, no, we're not giving you the washer and dryer as well. So Ted Lasso is just going to keep with whatever they suggested. So we're just going to do the refrigerator, the microwave, and the video doorbell. That's what we're asking for. Okay. Then down here it says, are there any other items of personal property that we're trying to include in the purchase? We're going to say are not. If there were, let's say that your buyer, when you went and saw the house, they really liked the couch set in the living room. They wanted to include that. Then you would mark R, and we would write up what's called a bill of sale. It's a separate document because it's not real estate property. It's considered personal property. We would write up a separate bill of sale and saying we'd like to purchase the couch set as well. It'll be included in the price of the home already negotiated, something like that, okay? But for now, to keep it simple, we're just going to say there are not. Ted Lasso has his own couches. He's going to bring them in, okay? Water service. This is talking about like if there are water rights or water shares that are going to be included with the house. Usually with residential properties, you don't need to worry about anything. You can just leave this blank, okay? It's more things like land, like a development site, things like that. There might be water shares that you're purchasing as well. Okay, let's do purchase price. We said we're going to do $640 for the purchase price. Earnest money, you're taking this amount from the top and you're just restating it down here. So we have $5,000. I'm going to say Ted has about 15% that he can put down. So if I do 640,000, 15% of that is 9. What does that say? 9,600. Thank you. I clearly need my eyes checked. 9,600. I'm already doing 5% or 5,000 for the earnest money. So this balance of purchase price is the full down payment minus the earnest money deposit. Okay. So this is going to be 4,600. Is that right? That looks right. And then the rest is going to be a loan. So I can't do that math right now. Let's do this.
But that's not hard.
How is that right?
Right, because the loan officer could change something in terms of the loan.
Right. And that's fine. This is just more to give an estimate, just to say, hey, we have about this much to give down, and because you might go back and forth and negotiate price. So those numbers aren't necessarily going to be the numbers at closing, but they just kind of want a standard idea of like, this is how much they have to go down, or like, this is where we would say, hey, we're doing seller financing, or maybe it's a total cash purchase kind of a thing. Does that make sense? So it'll be something like that. Also, we totally did math wrong, and this is actually going to be 91,000. So,
yeah, when you're writing, can you explain that one again?
yes, so this is your down payment. So the balance of purchase price in cash at settlement. So this is what your buyer is bringing to closing. They have in their bank to pay. We call it cash, right? But it's the balance of cash, meaning you've deducted the earnest money from it already, because earnest money is considered part of the down payment. It's just paid in advance, right? So if we have $96,000 as the, the down payment, forgive me, I can't do math this early in the morning, so it's gonna be. Right now, if you have a first-time home buyer, there are loans out there that is 0 down, actually. So they might just need to do like an earnest money payment. But right now, standard with an FHA or VA loan, you're seeing more of like 3 to 5% down. Conventional loan still kind of depends on your mortgage company. But 20% is like the standard. Yeah. Right. I think so. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah, something like that. Talk to your lender about it, but they should be able to have these numbers if they've already been working with a lender. Yeah. And the lender will tell them, hey, this is how much we can spot you essentially. Like this is how much you would need to bring to closing if you were to buy a property, and they would have that number. It helps when you already have a pre-approval letter from the lender as well. So you have to do a little bit of homework before you can do a loan, but and then you're just going to do your math, make sure that all of these items add up to your purchase price. So this purchase price here should always equal this purchase price here. If these numbers don't add up to that, you might need to do a little bit of recalculating, make sure you have the right numbers, okay? Section 2.2 is asking if they need to sell their current home in order to be able to afford this home. Not necessarily like, let's say they have enough cash that they could own both houses and they'd be fine, then it's going to be is not. Like their financial ability to buy the house is not dependent on selling a house. It's going to be is not. But if it is, then obviously we have that subject to sale addendum that we talked about, we would add as well. Okay. Any questions on purchase price or anything like that right now?
Say that you have to sell that you have to market in 7 days.
Within 7 days. Yep. 7 days, calendar days. So I always love it when buyers are like, yeah, let's get under contract in a house. I'm like, you understand that your house would then need to be on the market within a week, right? And they're like, oh, actually, let's wait a second. So yeah, make sure that your buyers know that, like, that's great. Right, right. That's it needs to be listed on the MLS with a agent. Yeah.
And you can do both sections.
Yes, you can.
And
You just can't represent both buyer and seller on the same property. That's the rule.
let's say that you have clients that need to sell their house
Mhm.
and it has to be listed within 7 days. Can like the sellers give you like the time, okay, you have to be able to sell the house within a month. So
Uh-huh.
you can say that.
Yep. It's a different addendum. It's called a time clause addendum. But essentially it's, okay, we understand the buyer's home is going up on the market. We're going to keep our home active on the market essentially, which means we can accept other offers. And if we do accept another offer, our current buyer has X amount of days to either get their home under contract or figure out financing in some other way. And if not, seller can cancel that contract and go with the other buyer. Yep. So yeah, that is definitely an option. Yep, exactly. It is right now. I've seen a lot of those in the last 6 months. Yep. Okay. Section 3 is talking about settlement and closing. I'm mostly just looking at the sections where I know we have to fill stuff in. So if you have questions on the other sections that I'm skipping, please let me know. And make sure, honestly, your homework for this class is to make sure you go through and at least read through the purchase contract at some point so you know what it says, because your buyers aren't going to know what's being said in here and you need to be able to explain each section to them. Okay. 3.3 is talking about possession. So when does the buyer actually get to take possession of the property? Usually it can be upon recording. As soon as the money has funded, it's recorded with the county that we've switched owners, then the buyer can move in. Not necessarily day of closing, it might be the next day, just whenever it funds and records. And your title officer will let you know once that's happened. Yep. But that's usually within 24 hours of closing. Let's say though, that your buyer wanted an extra week to move in though, like an extra week, like they close and they need an extra week to pack up their house before they move in. You could do like 7 calendar days after recording, that kind of a thing. Okay. We're going to do upon recording though. That's the most common, but again, you can do that. You could do 48 hours after recording, however you'd like to do that. Section 4 is talking about the prorations or the different fees associated with home ownership. So 4.2 is talking about if there are special payments that the HOA is going to ask for. Let's say the HOA decides that they need to repave the sidewalks while you're under contract. Who's going to pay for it, the buyer or the seller? Okay. Yes, exactly. Yep, that's part of it too. That's down here. So this one, 4.2, is just for a special assessment, like essentially a special project that the HOA is taking on while you're under contract. I usually like to ask the seller to pay for that because they're the ones still living in the home at that point. Obviously, after closing, anything that comes in after that, the buyer would pay for it. But we're saying that while we're under contract, we want the seller to be paying for it. Or you could do split equally between the buyer. Let's check our listing though and see if there is an HOA. Okay, so there is. If there wasn't an HOA, you could do other and just explain there's no HOA, so it doesn't apply. But I'm going to do the seller on this one. Section 4.3, similar things, is talking about escrow payments, rental deposits or prepaid rents. C is that change of ownership fee. Again, I like to ask the seller to pay for that, but you could split it equally. You could say the buyer is going to take it just to make your offer a little stronger in that sense. The other payment is your commission, how much you're going to make off of this deal. Okay. So again, this isn't necessarily like your total that you will make from the deal. This is what you're asking the seller to pay for. Okay. So we're asking let's say your buyer broker agreement, you can make up to 3% of the purchase price. That's what you negotiated with your buyer. So you may want to ask the seller to pay for the whole thing so that your buyer doesn't have to pay anything. Or to make your offer stronger, say that you're only going to ask them to pay 2.5%. Either way, okay? But that's something that the way I like to do it is if whatever you've negotiated with your buyer, that's what I ask for first, because that's the most you can make. Yeah. Yep. But don't be surprised if they counter and say we won't pay the full 3%, but we'll pay 2.5% or 2%. That happens a lot right now these days, right, Amy? Yeah. So we're going to say 2.5%. Keep in mind that if my buyer broker agreement says 3%, that means it's up to the buyer to pay my other 0.5% of commission. Now, that being said, if you want, you could waive that and say, buyer, you know what, I really like working with you and I'd love to work with you again. So don't worry about the 0.5%. I will just take the 2.5 that the seller is going to pay for and we'll just call it good. Okay. You can do that. You don't even necessarily need to like write up an addendum to your buyer broker agreement. You could just have that conversation and let your transaction coordinator know so that they don't charge you, and let your title officer know as well. But we're going to say that we're asking for 2.5%. Let's say that instead of doing a percentage, you're just going to take a flat fee. So you're just going to take 10,000. Make sure that either one or the other is filled out. Don't do both, because then the seller can choose which one they want to pay you. Okay. So this is not and, this is or. So pick one. Okay. Right. Yeah. Don't put 0. Otherwise, you're not going to get paid anything. That's exactly right. Okay. Any questions on commissions? Okay, sweet. Section 5 is just confirming who's representing who. So Aaron is representing the seller, eXp Realty is representing the seller, I'm representing the buyer, KW Westfield is the buyer's brokerage representing the buyer. Okay. Let's say that Aaron and I were both from KW Westfield. It would look more like this. She's representing the seller, but KW Westfield would be written in here, and they're representing both buyer and seller. Does that make sense? Okay. But usually it's going to look like this: seller, seller, buyer, buyer. Sweet. If we were from the same brokerage, we would just need to fill out yet another form called the limited agency agreement that just states the brokerage is representing both parties, but the parties are being represented by separate agents. So it's all fair kind of a thing.
That-
Because the brokerage is a limited agent because they're representing both. So not necessarily the agents themselves, but the brokerage is limited in what it can do because it's representing both.
But our clients.
Correct. Yep. I have seen that before, but we don't do it here at KW. Dean won't allow us to. So what you could do is, if you're representing the seller, you find the buyer. You can give the buyer two options saying, hey, I can't represent you. So what I can do is I can recommend you to a good friend of mine who's an agent. They would represent you, and then you would work out with that agent a referral fee. So that's my favorite way to do it, because then I can make more money off of it, right? So like if I was representing the seller, I brought in a buyer, I said, Amy, I found a buyer for my seller. Will you represent the buyer and give me 25% of your commission? And Amy's thrilled to have a buyer. So she says, absolutely, I will happily give up 25% of my commission to you. That's my favorite way to do it, because then it doesn't limit you in any way how you represent your clients. And both clients get full representation. So that's my favorite way to do it. Or you can say, buyer, I'm so glad you like the house. I can't represent you, but you could do this as an unrepresented buyer, meaning you don't have an agent. That does put you at a little bit of risk because I can't legally represent you in any way. You would have to kind of negotiate yourself. I can't give you any kind of hints as to what the seller wants or is doing. So it's a risk on your end, but it could save you some money if you do it that way. That kind of a thing, right? So those are kind of the two options. So I have seen it, but Dean doesn't allow us to do it anymore here.
Oh, but we'll-
Yeah, correct. Yes, unrepresented is okay. Yep. Or you hand it off to an agent friend here and get the referral. Exactly. Yep. And I've seen, and I mean, that percentage, that 25% is completely negotiable. I've seen agents here say, I will give you 80% and I'll take 20%. Since you did all the hard work, I'm basically just signing documents and making sure they get to closing on time. You know what I mean? So it just kind of depends. Find a friend here in the brokerage and you guys can swap business together. So that's my recommendation. Okay. Title and title insurance. This is saying that we're going to get a title insurance policy, which is called a title commitment. Seller disclosures, the seller is going to give all the documentation on the home to the buyer within an appropriate amount of time so they can make an informed decision whether or not they're going to complete the purchase. Section 8 is talking about the buyer's conditions of purchase. So due diligence. Do they want a span of time where they can do due diligence on the home? Inspections, they can go in and look at the home, look for any problems. Usually that's going to be a yes. The times I see this condition being waived is like if it's a flip property and they're like, we're taking it as is. We know there's issues. We don't need to do an inspection and make sure. Okay. But usually, especially with a first time home buyer, you do want that due diligence condition because it gives them a chance to call an inspector in. They can research the neighborhood and they can cancel for any reason. It could be they just don't like the way that the house smells and they could leave. Or they just decide they don't like the neighborhood all that much and want to back out. So I like the due diligence condition, especially just because it gives your buyer the opportunity to cancel for whatever reason. Let's say they had a dream in the middle of the night and their dead grandma came to them and said, don't buy the house. They could cancel for that reason, okay? Appraisal condition, usually if they're getting a loan in this market, they are getting an appraisal. The lender will require that to be done. Section 8.3 is talking about financing. Again, if they're getting any kind of a loan, even if it's not from like a mortgage company, it's from a hard money lender, that's still financing required. They have to somehow they don't have that money in the bank. They have to get it from somewhere else, okay? So usually if there's financing required in 8.3, the appraisal is going to be required in 8.2. Okay, that's just kind of a given, at least in this market. Okay, this section down here, buyer's right to cancel before the financing and appraisal deadline. This is basically asking if we've passed, let's see, once we've passed the, what is it? I think it's the finance and appraisal deadline. If we've passed that and we haven't canceled, X amount of the earnest money deposit will become non-refundable, is what this is saying. So if I really wanted to make my offer strong, I would say, yep, we're okay with that being non-refundable. If for whatever reason we decided to cancel after our deadlines, you would get the earnest money. The seller would get the earnest money instead of the buyer getting it back. Talk with your buyer about, don't just give away their money, obviously. But honestly, right now I'm seeing this just left blank. I'm not seeing a ton of this usually, unless it's like a flip property and there's a lot of offers coming in, right? That kind of a thing. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry. This is after the due diligence deadline. I knew I was reading that wrong. Okay, this is after the due diligence deadline. If they cancel after that time, then their earnest money would go non-refundable. And you don't necessarily have to do the full earnest money amount. You could do half of it. You could do $1,000 of it, whatever. But right now, I'm seeing most people leaving that blank. Section 8.4 is kind of similar. This is saying if we get past the due diligence or the financing and appraisal deadline, whichever is later, so usually the financing and appraisal deadline, buyer is going to contribute even more earnest money. So like we are so sure that we're going to put another $10,000 down before we even close, that kind of a thing. Yeah, still considered part of the down payment. Yep. Again, I'm not seeing a ton of that right now, but that is an option. If Ted wanted to give another $5,000 down before we even went to closing, he could do that. Okay. Addenda. There are going to be addenda. We're going to do a closing cost addenda, so I'm just going to put addendum number 1. If you were asking for seller financing, you would use the seller financing addendum. You would click that. If you had a loan addendum, you would click here. Or like if you had that subject to sale property addendum, you could do that. Just make sure if you have multiple addenda that they're all accounted for. So let's say that I had like a standard closing cost addendum and a FHA loan addendum. Make sure that you do both. Okay. And yes, they're included in my, it's going to be in a blank addendum and we're going to add that language into it. It is, but we have to write it in. I'll show you. Yeah. But yeah, if I look up here, here's my packet. I have these addenda included. Usually you want your FHA addendum to be your first addendum. So in that case, I might call this one addendum number 2, but both are accounted for. Does that make sense? If I numbered FHA as my number 1 addendum and my closing cost is going to be my number 2 addendum. Not necessarily, but just essentially just make sure both are accounted for. Yeah. Yes. So like if you got a counter offer back, you don't have to go back and correct this. This is just with the original offer so they know what other addenda to be looking for in their inbox. Yeah. Which hopefully you've put it all in one packet, one document, and it's really easy, but yeah. Okay, home warranty plan. The buyer can either ask for that to be included in the transaction or not. If they are, check with your favorite warranty companies what their prices are like. For a home this size, I'm going to say the price is going to be about $700 for a 1-year warranty plan. And usually if we're asking for this, I'm going to ask that the seller can order and select it, but that I'm going to ask that the buyer can order and select the company, and the seller's going to pay for it. Yep. So like Elevate Home Warranty might have a $650 plan, and we could go with that instead of the $700. Yeah. Okay. We're going to skip all this language. It's very important though, so make sure you read through it later. Mediation. This is talking about if there's any dispute regarding the purchase contract. prior to or after closing, are we requesting that they shall go to mediation, or do they have the option to figure it out some other way, like going to court and settling in court, that kind of a thing? So I do may at the option usually, just because that's something that they can figure out on their own. But if they really want to avoid like an actual court case and would rather everyone just wants to do it in mediation, I'll just do shall. It
Have to be involved.
not necessarily. You'll probably get called in for questions and things like that, but you're nowhere on the contract other than you were their representative. But the contract is between the buyer and seller. So they would be the ones in court.
How?
Honestly, it's kind of sixes. I usually start with may at the option of the party, and if they ask to change it to shall, I can. So if you do shall, though, it just means that it will go to mediation rather than court, which is always a safer and cheaper bet for everybody. So you could easily just put shall. It's totally fine. Okay, this is section 16 is talking about defaults. So if someone can't live up to their end of the bargain, what happens, right? Where does earnest money go? That kind of thing. This is important to understand, so make sure you read through that. Okay. Section number 21 is important. Time is of the essence. This is essentially saying that all of these deadlines or conditions we're talking about have a 5 p.m. deadline. It's not a midnight deadline, it's a 5 p.m. deadline. Because the idea here in Utah is that we're not working after 5 p.m. Okay, which is not obviously accurate for real estate, but we try. So as we're talking about these deadlines here, remind your buyers that they have until 5 p.m. that day. They can't wait until they get off of work to finally review the inspection report and decide to cancel at 8:30 p.m. You say, sorry, if we do that, you're going to lose your earnest money. So you need to be ahead of the game. Okay. Okay, deadlines. Seller disclosure deadline. Usually I like to see it somewhere between 3 to 5 days after acceptance. So you could literally write in here 3 days after acceptance. I don't love doing that. I like doing actual calendar days just because then I don't have to go, everybody doesn't have to go back and try counting days, and then there'd be some kind of miscommunication as to what day it actually is. So if we're sending this offer in today, hopefully they'll accept it by tomorrow. We want seller disclosures by Friday. Okay. I also try to avoid weekends and holidays for these deadlines because no one wants to try to be coming up on a deadline when nobody's working, right? Due diligence, I usually like to give so once I have the seller disclosure deadline, I usually do about a week in between every other deadline, unless we need more or less time and your buyer has communicated that, okay? So if we're doing seller disclosure on the 16th, I'm going to ask for the 23rd for due diligence. So we need to do an inspection before then and request any repairs ideally before that time. Okay. Financing and appraisal on the 30th. So they need to make sure that you have a clear to close from your lender, that kind of a thing by then. You may not have actual clear to close by then, but you should have a good idea by that deadline if they're going to be able to close on time. Okay. And then settlement, we'll do another week out. So we're closing on February 6th. Okay. Any question on those deadlines? Feel good? Okay. Okay. Section 25 is the basically the acceptance deadline of this offer. Again, because section 21 talks about how everything is done by 5 p.m., I like to keep it to 5 p.m. as well here. But let's say I was sending this on a Friday afternoon or even a Thursday afternoon, I might give them until noon on Saturday to accept it. That doesn't necessarily mean that once that deadline hits, they can't ever talk about this contract again. They could still counter after that time. But if they were just going to accept the contract as is, they need to do it by this time. Does that make sense? Yeah, you could. So let's say that, right. Let's say that the deadline has passed and they decide they do want to accept it. What the listing agent would then do is write up a counter offer It's essentially just an addendum that's marked as a counteroffer saying that the acceptance deadline has been pushed out another day or whatever. And as long as they sign it by then it's fully under contract and everything like that. Okay. But that means that their seller would have to sign the original offer, this counter offer, and then send that back for your buyer to sign the counter offer. Once all of those things are accepted, then you're under contract. I should say, once everything is accepted and you've communicated to each other that it's accepted, then you're under contract. That's a big part with under contract. Both parties have to be aware that they are under contract in order for it to be legally binding. Okay. So if you ever do get under contract, make sure that you have that discussion with the listing agent. You've called them, you've texted them, you've emailed them the accepted contract saying, hey, we're under contract. I like to do all three because I'm pushy like that. But then all my T's are crossed, I's dotted, all that stuff. So as far as time for acceptance, I usually like to give them 24 to 48 hours to accept. So because we're doing it so early in the morning today, I'm going to say by 5 p.m. tomorrow, we'd like a response. Okay. And then, so that's everything for the offer. We're going to go look at an addendum. Okay. Any questions on the offer though? We've gone through a lot. Sorry, that's kind of a fire hose of information. So if anyone has questions, please. Okay, sweet. All right, let's go to our next form. This is going to be our first addendum. So you're going to number it addendum number 1, mark it as an addendum. You got the date, buyer's name, seller's name, property address, and that all came from auto-populating, right? And then here is where you can write in whatever other things you want to add to the contract. Things like closing costs or, I don't know, let's say that you know the seller's going to need an extra week after they close to get out. You could write in some kind of, like, they'll pay X amount in rent kind of a thing for that week, that kind of a thing. If you do have something like that, please call me first because there's a special document for that we would rather use rather than writing it in here. Before you do write anything into a blank addendum, check your available clauses here first because it could be that they've already come up with language for you, so you don't have to write it all yourself or from ChatGPT because we know we love ChatGPT. Use these approved clauses first though, okay? So we're going to do a closing cost addendum because we're going to ask for the seller to contribute to our buyer's closing costs. And Ted is also my brother, so I need to disclose that we are related. Okay, so I'm going to use, yeah, go ahead. Dean says if it's within your immediate family, absolutely disclose it. Outside of that, it's up to you. I like to still disclose it. If there were any reason that they could go to court and say they got unfair treatment because the seller or the agent and the client were related, if there was any kind of argument for that, I would put it in here. So for me, I'm super close to my extended family, like my cousins. I would want to disclose that for me personally, but it just kind of depends. We have a lot of agents who are doing work for like their cousin's aunt on the other side. You don't necessarily need to disclose something like that. So the short answer is if it's immediate family, absolutely disclose it. After that, use your discretion. So, okay, so once I've dragged those over from available to selected, I'm going to click load selected clauses. It's going to take a second, and then our language is written in for us, and we just fill it out, what's missing, okay? So we're going to ask the seller to contribute $10,000 to our buyer's closing costs. And I really like the way this is worded because it's saying that this money can be used at the buyer's discretion. It could go towards a reduction in the interest rate. So like basically a buy down for your interest rate. It could go towards the mortgage financing costs, so the lender costs, closing costs from title companies. They could use it to pay for the moving truck. You know what I mean? Things like that. So I like, anytime you're asking for closing costs, I recommend using this clause from the MLS because it's up to the buyer how they want to use that, and there's no limit on how they can use that. Okay. Then disclosure of interest, we're just going to disclose that the buyer is a relative of a real estate broker or agent participating in this transaction. Okay. If you were representing yourself, let's say Amy was buying her own property, she would say the buyer is a real estate broker or sales agent. Yes. Nope. 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 Just as long as you have a blank addendum, you can pull that language into any of them. You don't necessarily, you wouldn't need to do two separate addenda, one for closing costs, one for disclosure of interest, put it together. Makes everybody's life easier. But people will often, when they like write up a listing agreement or a buyer broker agreement, they're like, where's the language saying that I'm related to them? You don't need that until you go under contract. So you don't need that until a purchase contract. You don't need it for a listing agreement or anything like that. Okay. Okay, so there's our addendum. Down here, you're just going to make sure that the seller has until that 5 p.m. deadline tomorrow. Just make sure that this acceptance deadline matches the acceptance deadline from the original offer. Okay. And then we're going to save the packet. I do have an FHA addendum here as well, but I'm going to pretend that I'm not using that right now. It's just this one here. But if you have questions specifically about that FHA VA addendum, let me know. Okay. Then what I do from here is I'm going to print. So I don't need that one. I'm going to print the PDF. I like to print everything all together so that it's in one PDF rather than separate ones, and I don't have to try to download and attach and upload all these different documents. It's just one document for me. Yeah.
So, you're not.
Yeah. Uh-huh. Yeah.
Put it all together.
Mm-hmm.
In
No. It is weird that they do ask for them separately. In Command, I just put it all in one document for the purchase contract because the addendum to the purchase contract is considered optional in Command. So as long as all the addenda are attached to the purchase contract, I just upload the one file and I leave the addendum one blank. Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. No, you could do it that way, but and compliance might like it better that way, but I'm trying to make my life easier. And overall, I think it's easier for everybody if it's all just one document. There you go. Yeah. So yeah, as long as it's the addendum to that document, right? Like I don't want to add an addendum to the purchase contract to the listing agreement because those are two completely different things, right? But if it's addenda to the purchase contract, I will absolutely just attach it to the purchase contract and upload it all at once. And just make sure that all the pages are in order, obviously, makes it easier. But
What point do you submit your buyer broker group? I mean, once
in
you
Command,
sign- Yeah, once you have it signed, where does it go from there?
once it's signed, you upload it into Command in the opportunity for that buyer. You can upload it there and you don't even need to submit it right away. You can just let it sit there until you're getting closer to closing and then you can submit it for review. Mm-hmm. In the opportunity. Mm-hmm. Yep. Maybe we need to have a class on Command, sounds like. Okay. So, we're generating our PDF. That's right. Okay, so I have my contract, I have my addendum. We're skipping this addendum. Generate the PDF. I just download it here and then I can pick where on my computer it's going to be saved to. So obviously you have your own system for that. We are going to, sure, downloads. Save. Then I would go to DocuSign. Oh, yeah, let's sign in. Does everyone know how to use DocuSign for the most part? Kind of. Ah, okay. So maybe it's more of a question of, is it correctly connected to your KW account? Okay, gotcha. They are, but for right now, we're still using it, so you still need to be connected to it. As far as getting it connected, sorry, I'm looking up my password because I don't have it memorized. We love a saved password feature, you know. As far as getting your DocuSign connected, if you go to scottleroymarketing.com, you can submit requests for help with getting that connected and everything, and they can do it for you. Super nice. Okay. Sure. Sorry, everybody, just hang tight for a second. Okay. So once you're logged in, you're going to create a new envelope is what it's called, I think. I'm just waiting for the start button to load here, and then you'll upload the document. You add the recipients or your signers, right? So I would add Ted Lasso, put his email in, and then I would go in and just add the fields of where he needs to initial and sign. Okay. So right here, we are okay, yeah. So click on that. It'll pull up your window where you can go and find the document that you just saved. You're going to go here. We're going to do Ted Lasso.
Do a signing order.
You can do a signing order if you need to. Nope, because you want your buyer to get it first. Yep. So I would send it to my buyer first, and then let's say we're just going to pretend that Amy is the listing agent, because hopefully it'll load her email. And so yeah, so Ted would be first, buyer would be first, and then once he signs, then it would go directly to the agent. The problem is most listing agents don't want to be receiving a bunch of DocuSign emails, so they prefer for you to write up an actual email from your own email address and attach the PDF of the offer. That's my tip on that is you can still do this, but if you are doing it this way, make sure you're also sending a separate email like, hey, in case you missed the DocuSign email, here's our offer. My buyer's super excited about it. Here are the highlights of the offer, just like quick bullet points. Send it to them, and then I would call or text the agent as well and say, hey, I just sent you an offer. Can you confirm that you have it? Kind of a thing. Yes. Yep. Not the, nope. Not an offer. There are different documents that he may need to sign, but usually with an offer and addendum. There are some with the listing that he may need to sign, but nothing at this point. So if you are sending it to, or like, let's say that Ted is signing it, but his wife also wants a copy. She's not necessarily signing. I could still send her a copy. So I would just, instead of having it needs to sign, it would just, she just receives a copy. Okay. So yeah, you could do it that way. Then I would go next. You can write a little message in there if you want to, like, hey, Ted, here's the offer, review and sign it, please. Okay, then on here, what you're going to do is you're going to add the initials. They're going to initial each page. I just resize it so it's not, you know, all over the words here. It was like this, and I just.
Oh, you just. Yeah.
Yep. And then put the date signed. Make sure it's assigned to Ted. But then I can click and drag here and highlight both fields here. Command C. And then Command V to paste it in the same place on the next page. Makes it way faster. Do that on every page. Casey, nice to meet you.
So sorry to leave. I don't.
You're totally fine. Have a good one. Let's see. Make sure you get it on this page as well. And then you're going to add their signature here. And the date again. Again, if there were 2 signers, you would do the same thing over here. And then you would there would be a field here where you could reassign it to the other signer. Okay, so make sure you have 2 different colors if you have 2 different signers. Okay. This is for the seller. They'll mark either accepted or their counter offering with addendum number 2. They'll sign it here, so you can leave that blank. Addendum 1, again, you're going to add signature, date, and then you also need to add a checkbox here to mark that they are the buyer. Okay, don't forget that. Otherwise, compliance will not process your file at closing. Okay, and then you don't get paid. So make sure that that's marked. And then also just put their initials, down here as well. And that's everything. We would send it. And then if I am Ted, let's see, go to my other account. I just got an email from myself saying Britney Fronk sent you a document from DocuSign, review and sign it. They would click in. They can either do this from their phone or their email, obviously. I think we all know how DocuSign works, but they would log in. They can sign everything. Once it's signed, you would get a copy from DocuSign that you can then download from your email, and you can email it off to the listing agent with that email we talked about. Okay. Any questions on offers? That's how you write an offer. All good? Sweet.
Yeah.
Yes, you do. Yep. If you go to scottleroymarketing.com, they can help you get it set up and synced. Leroy.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's Scott and then LEROY marketing.com. Oh no. No, it is Leroy, but it's 2 separate words, so it's Leroy is how they say it. Yep. Anyway. Okay. Any questions on that? All good? Amazing. Okay. So I think Cam is headed to a meeting. He said he was going to be down here at 10:30. But what you're going to do now, oh sure, no, that's totally fine. If you have time, I would recommend finding a property and writing up a practice offer for a client of yours, even if it's just yourself. But write it up. I can be here to answer questions as you're going through it, just so you get in the feel and in the habit of doing this. Also, if you're working with a transaction coordinator like me, all of you have access to use my services, by the way, while you're on Cameron's productivity coaching team as a new agent here. You get to use me for free, which is really nice. If you ever have an offer that you need written up, you can text me and I can write up the offer for you. I would just have you fill out a form that tells me everything I need to know about the offer, and then I can write it up. But if for whatever reason, like let's say you have a buyer that saw a home Saturday morning, they want to get an offer in like before the end of the day, I can't help you because I'm not in the office. So you would need to know how to write it up, which is why we want to teach you how to do this. But if you do have a transaction coordinator, the idea is that you can leverage a lot of this work to them. Right, Amy? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And
Cover from, let's say I wrote the contract.
Uh-huh.
And you were taking care of all paperwork, make sure everything is got, some of all those stuff that you take back.
I would, so once you have an offer, like something under contract, you would send it to me. Again, I would have you just fill out a form just so I have your buyer's information, title, lender, that kind of a thing. And then I would email the listing agent, I would email you, both title companies, the lender. I'd put all of us in a group email and say, hey, we're under contract. Here's the contract. Here are the deadlines, the key details. and I'd basically just coordinate all of that. Like, we need to open files with this title company and this title company, and we have an inspection. I would help you schedule the inspection. I would reach out to your clients directly. I'd CC you on the emails, but I'd reach out to them directly and I'd explain their next steps. Like, hey, here's how you pay your earnest money. Here's how we go about scheduling an inspection. If you're wanting a home warranty company, here are the companies you can choose from. Let me know which one you want to use and we can order it. I just kind of give them more detailed steps as to what they need to be doing. Like I said, I help you schedule an inspection. Once you have the inspection report, I can help you write up an addenda if you're requesting any repairs or additional concessions. If you just have to negotiate at some point in the process, I help you write up the addenda that you need for that. What else do I do? I don't even know. Yeah, I make sure we hit deadlines and we're not behind. I send out reminders that, hey, deadlines are coming. So if there's anything else you need to ask for, or if you need to cancel, we need to know before this time, that kind of a thing. I'll help schedule closing when it comes time for closing. Make sure everybody has copies of everything. So like when you get the seller disclosures from the listing agent, I make sure that your buyer gets copies of all of those things. Uh-huh. Yep. It's $3.95. Yep. And that's only if it closes. If it doesn't close, I don't get paid because you don't get paid. So it's only if you get, it's only if we actually make it to closing, then we all get paid and it's a happy day. But yeah, it's mostly just coordinating, making sure everybody's on the same page and we hit our deadlines. And there are a couple ways you can do it. Usually it's coming out of your commission, or if you want your client to pay for it, you would charge them that additional amount, that $3.95 at closing, and it would come directly from the buyer. It would come from the title company, but they pay that amount at closing and they send over the extra amount. That's in their buyer broker agreement. If you want them to pay for it, it's when it's talking about your compensation, you would say 3% and $395. A handful, it's less common, but I've seen it. I try to train agents to do that so that they're not losing more of their commission to me. Because, you can, yeah. And then I just say, you know what, fine, we'll waive it, and hopefully that smooths things over and, motivates them to keep working with you in the future. But a lot of the times you can pass it off as this is a processing fee. We have to pay it to the brokerage. So it just kind of depends how you want to do it. Most people will just pay it from their commission. But yeah. But while you're on the productivity coaching team for your first 4 closings, KW covers my transaction fee. So you don't need to, it doesn't come out of your commission. It comes from KW's split. So, okay. Yes, of course. Thanks for coming. You're very welcome. Is anyone staying to practice an offer? You gotta run. Oh, okay. Oh, gotcha. That would definitely help. Yeah. Stacey, are you sticking around? Amazing. Sorry, what was that? Okay. Okay. Yes, absolutely. If you want to get started on it, and let me know when you have questions and I can help out. Oh, geez. Okay. Reverse mortgage. I know I've done it in the past, but they're so far and few between that I'm completely blanking on it. Okay.